Be reviewing today Chapter 2 of Wetzel Limnology textbook. This is the 4th edition, and we will be going over the importance of inland waters. So a basic feature of the Earth is an abundance of water, which extends over 71% of its surface. Almost 99% of this immense hydrosphere lies in ocean depressions and polar ice deposits. In the hydrosphere, most of the water is saline and only 2.5% is freshwater, with lakes, reservoirs, and rivers representing only 0.26% of freshwater, and the rest being mainly groundwater, about 30%, and ice and permanent snow cover, about 69%. The relatively small amount of water that occur in freshwater lakes and rivers belie their fundamental importance in the maintenance and survival of terrestrial life, our freshwater resources. Any analysis of inland water resources must address the preeminence of human growth and utilization of freshwater. Humans must be recognized for what they are, animals whose population is growing. In spite of its absurdity, a belief prevails that the Earth's supply of finite water resources can be increased constantly to meet exponential demands. Freshwater are a finite resource that can be increased only slightly. For example, the desalination of ocean water requires tremendous energy expenditures for the treatment, process, and distribution of the products once obtained. In the past, society has tended to underappreciate the role that humans have played as influential factors in the maintenance of lake and river ecosystems. Our understanding of anthropogenic impacts has been increasing steadily over the last several decades. Freshwater utilization is governed by the spiraling relationships in which supply is constantly expanded in response to growing demands. The unfortunate effect of growth is that consumption increases in response to rising supply. At the initial stages of economic growth, consumption has grown uncontrollably, but then actions have been taken to reduce water use and pollution and decouple economic growth from water consumption. Since the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992, several international action plans have been proposed to build global partnership for sustainable development and were adopted under the auspices of the United Nations. In 2015, all United Nations member states adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that provides a shared plan for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, setting 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. Among the SDGs, SDG 6 aims to ensure the availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. SDG 15 calls for the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of terrestrial and inland freshwater ecosystem and their services. SDG 14 focuses on the conservation and sustainable use of coastal and marine resources. So in this figure, you can see two curves. The first curve in orange shows the annual population growth in millions from 1950 through 2020. And then in blue are data points for renewable internal freshwater resources per capita. So what you see, as the population is increasing, you see a decrease in the amount of renewable freshwater resources per capita as well. Drivers of global change. Continued rapid population growth poses challenges for sustainable development, putting additional pressure on already strained water resources. The world population reached 7.8 billion as of January 2021, having added 1 billion people since 2007 and 2 billion since 1994. And actually here now, in early 2025, we are about 8 billion people. It is expected to reach about 8.5 billion by 2030 and further increase to 9.7 billion by 2050. Not only population growth, but also economic development have far-reaching implications for water supplies and their use. Humanity's water demands are rapidly increasing as developing countries undergo economic transformation and their living standards rise. The degradation of the biosphere and water resources occur as a result of the utilization of the environment for production and consumption. Although about 106 kilometer cube of precipitation the ultimate source of the freshwater supplies, falls on the land surface per year, about 2/3 of that amount is returned to the atmosphere by evaporation and plant transpiration, collectively referred to as evapotranspiration, and only about 37% of terrestrial precipitation, or 39,600 kilometer cube, forms a renewable freshwater supply recharging groundwater, rivers, and lakes. A substantial portion of this water supply is inaccessible to humans due to its remoteness or inability to store seasonal flow. From the total renewable water supply, 75% or 29,700 kilometer cube per year is accessible. The part of this water being extracted from groundwater aquifers, rivers, and lakes for human use is called water withdrawal. Between 1900 and 2020, global water withdrawal increased by nearly 8 times, from 500 to 4,000 kilometer cube per year. Agriculture, which includes irrigation, animal husbandry, and aquaculture, is the world's main water user, accounting for 69% of annual water withdrawals. Industry, including power generation, account for 19% of the total, while households account for 12%. However, this proportion varies strongly among countries and continents. If the global water withdrawal of 4,000 kilometer cube per year were divided evenly among the 7.8 billion humans now on Earth, each person could potentially use 512 meter cube of water annually, or about 1,400 liters per day. This amount can seem high in relation to the physiological requirements of humans. The World Health Organization estimates that humans need between 50 to 100 liters of water per day. However, this is insufficient in view of modern technological demands, and the water resources are far from being distributed evenly among Earth's population. The average per capita water withdrawal in the United States is 1,367 kilometer cube per year, or about 3,745 liters per person per day, making it one of the most water-intensive countries in the world. In the United States, the two most important uses of water are thermoelectric power generation, about 41% of total withdrawal for all uses, and irrigation, about 42%. Another example is Greece, with a total water withdrawal per capita of 962 meter cube per year, or 2,636 liters per person per day. Agriculture uses the majority of this amount, about 80%, while municipal water withdrawal account for 16.7%, or about 17%, and industries uses only 3.2% of this amount. Water stress is defined as the ratio of annual water withdrawal to annual renewable water resources minus environmental flow requirements. The global indicator of water stress provides an efficient estimate of pressures that human activities exert over natural freshwater resources. A country is water scarce if this ratio lies in the range of 25 to 70%, and severely water scarce if this ratio exceeds 70%. Among the 53 countries worldwide currently experiencing water scarcity, in 22 countries the scarcity is severe, including 11 countries such as Libya, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, where the water stress index is above 100%, and freshwater demand is largely met by desalination. Global water demand is expected to continue rising due to increasing population and socioeconomic development. At the same time, climate change is projected to alter water availability, with a decrease in water resources in many mid-latitude and dry subtropical regions, and an increase in high latitude and many humid mid-latitude regions. Continued global warming is projected to further intensify the global water cycle, including its variability and the severity of wet and dry events. Human impacts on freshwater ecosystem. The real freshwater supply is much smaller than the potential total because of many factors. First, rainfall is not evenly distributed over land surfaces, and humans themselves are not distributed over land in proportion to water availability. This disparity results in a great expanse of resources and energy for distribution system to move water from places of water abundance to water where it is inadequate to support human activities. Second, Total consumption has increased exponentially with population and economic growth. Expansion of distribution system to areas of low precipitation, such as for irrigation of semi-arid region, results in disproportionately high use of water because of very high losses by evapotranspiration. Third, the degradation of water quality from contaminants can severely reduce the water supply available for other purposes. Freshwaters of the world are collectively experiencing markedly accelerating rate of qualitative and quantitative degradation. Population growth and economic development are the most important drivers of pressures on freshwater quantity and quality. In addition, human activities exert multiple pressures on freshwater ecosystem through water, air, and soil pollution, changes in the natural landscape, catchments, drainage and river channelization, disconnection of floodplains, river continuity interaction, etc., overfishing, and the introduction of invasive species. As described in the subsequent chapters in this book, the pressure leads to an altered economic states, ecosystem condition, and ecosystem services. Human life depends on nature. The concept of ecosystem services has been introduced to highlight how human well-being is connected to nature. Ecosystem services are defined as the benefit that people obtain from ecosystem and the direct and indirect contribution of ecosystem to human well-being. Ecosystem functioning and biodiversity provides multiple benefits to humans. Examples of water ecosystem services are drinking water, water provision for industry, irrigation and transportation system, fishing, water purification, life cycle maintenance, flood protection, etc. So before we move on further, I wanted to go over figure 2-2, which is a conceptual framework for water management. So here we have the drivers on top, which are the basic human needs, activities. So drivers are basically influences activities, which are human action that can influence the environment. Then we have direct pressures. These activities have direct pressures upon the environment, and these direct pressures alter the ecosystem. So there are state changes, and that has an impact on welfare, which is the change of provisions of goods and benefits for society. And then lastly, these impacts on welfare then drives a response, which are human action to prevent, mitigate, and adverse changes. And these responses here influence drivers, they influence activities, they influence pressures, and they influence state changes. So you can see the interrelatedness of these all these factors upon ecosystem services. An ecosystem condition influences the delivery of ecosystem services. Good ecosystem status supports high delivery of services. Anthropogenic pressures affect the conditions of aquatic ecosystem and in turn the delivery of their ecosystem services. We need to protect and restore water ecosystem to conserve and enhance biodiversity and water resources, and to ensure the capacity of ecosystems to continue delivering a whole range of ecosystem services essential to human well-being. Looking back at the repetitious history of responses to impending environmental disasters, we can be optimistic about the future only until such time as our understanding of the operation of the biosphere and our knowledge of freshwater ecosystem in particular is adequate to allow us to recognize the point of irreversibility. Figure 2-3. So this figure shows the relationship between humans and aquatic ecosystems. Human activities generate multiple pressures on aquatic ecosystem. Pressures affect the biodiversity and the condition of the aquatic ecosystem, which can result in a change in the ecosystem services. So we have this interrelatedness in terms of humans and aquatic ecosystems. So humans drive pressures upon the aquatic ecosystem, and the aquatic ecosystem then provide ecosystem services to humans. And so there's a sort of cyclical system here. And then there's a sustainability and resilience in terms of this entire relationship, right? So we need to kind of drive sustainability in the system, as well as there's some built-in resilience to the response that we have upon the aquatic ecosystem, and the aquatic ecosystem as upon us through the generation of ecosystem services. So the biodiversity and resilience of ecosystems are interconnected. Biodiversity increases the stability and resilience of ecosystem functioning. Global changes are threatening the stability and resilience of this ecosystem. Safe planetary boundaries have been overstepped for biosphere integrity. Biodiversity loss and extinction, nitrogen and phosphorus biogeochemical flows, and climate and land system changes. Crossing planetary boundaries increases the risk of irreversible environmental changes. It is of the utmost importance, therefore, that we understand the structure and functioning of a freshwater ecosystem, which is the overall aim of limnology, including humans as a key component of this ecosystem. Understanding the metabolic responses of aquatic ecosystem is essential in order to confront and offset the effect of these alterations and in order to achieve maximum effective management of freshwater resources. A well-documented effect of human impacts on aquatic ecosystem is eutrophication, a multifaceted term associated with increased productivity, simplification of biotic communities, and a reduction in the ability of the metabolism of the organism to adapt to the imposed loading of nutrients. These conditions lead to reduced stability of the ecosystem. In this condition of eutrophication, excessive inputs often exceed the capacity of the ecosystem to be balanced. In reality, however, the ecosystems are out of equilibrium only with respect to the freshwater chemical and biotic characteristics that are desired by humans for specific purposes. In order to have any hope of effectively integrating humans as a component of aquatic ecosystems and of monitoring their utilization of these resources, it is mandatory that we comprehend in some detail the functional properties of freshwaters. Only then can we evaluate and predict with reasonable certainty the influence human activities will have on the metabolic characteristics of these ecosystems. Knowledge about the structure and the functioning of water ecosystem is fundamental to informing management and policy decisions for a sustainable use of our aquatic ecosystem and water resources. The analysis should embrace a holistic view that encompasses the dynamics of the water system. First of all, water follows river basin boundaries rather than national boundaries. And within the river basin, all waters are connected. That is, there is a link between upstream and downstream waters, groundwaters and surface waters, inland and coastal waters, and of course, via the atmosphere. Second, the drivers of changes and anthropogenic pressures such as pollution, hydromorphological alterations, and changes in species abundance and composition can have both a local and a global dimension. Third, in aquatic ecosystem, a lag time can occur between anthropogenic pressures and the detection of impacts, and between restoration interventions and effective recovery, as ecological processes and water retention time vary greatly across different freshwater ecosystems. Actions to protect and restore inland water such as rivers, lakes, and wetlands should consider all these connections in the land-sea continuum. In summary, almost 99% of the immense amount of water in the biosphere occurs in the ocean and polar ice deposits. In the hydrosphere, most of the water is saline and only 2.5% is freshwater, with lakes and reservoirs representing 0.26%. Finite water resources are being exploited and degraded at an accelerating rate by the activities of humankind. Human activities affect water resources through direct water consumption. Human life and well-being depend on nature. Pressures affect the condition and biodiversity of the aquatic ecosystem, and this can change the ecosystem services, that is, the benefit to people. And we need to understand the structure and function of freshwater ecosystem, which is the overall aim of limnology, adopting a holistic view of the human environment system to protect and enhance the aquatic ecosystem and to secure sustainable use of freshwater resources. So there's a section on acknowledgement, and then a reference section, and then lastly, I wanted to thank the authors of this chapter, which are Bruna Grisetti and Sandra Poican.